Welcome back to That Rugby podcast hosted by the Rugby Booth. My name is Luke. Again, last one for just myself today. Hughesy will be back again next week or potentially later on this week for a double up episode. But a lot of international rugby took place and I thought it wasn't right not to chat about it on the episode today. So quickly I'm going to run you through the results to make sure we're all aligned, and then I'll run you through the main games that I've watched back and kind of opinions on those games. So a lot of rugby, as I said. Tonga played Italy, hosted Italy. Italy won that 36-14. USA hosted Scotland, 7-42 to Scotland. Canada hosted Romania, 35-22 to Canada. Samoa hosted Spain, 34-30 to Samoa, in some very wet conditions in Samoa. Japan hosted Georgia, 23-25. So Eddie Jones, we're going to touch base on him a little bit later. Another bad performance, another knock on his cap at the moment. Namibia hosted Portugal. Portugal won that 37-22. So those are kind of like the minnows, as we call them, or the second tier to a point. Scotland in there. They probably aren't second tier. Samoa getting pretty close to that top tier as well. Playing some good footy. But those games, I guess the extras over and done with. And so then we have now the big games. First up, I'm going to talk about is Australia versus Wales, 36-28 for the Wallabies over the Welsh. So another loss. I think that was their ninth consecutive loss for the Welsh. So they're in a bit of a hole. This game as a whole, I caught all of the second half and have watched back the first half. Bit of a strange one. Obviously, points came pretty easily, but the way the points came were either special or well played. So, look, again, for Australia to start off with, another step in the right direction. They've 2 from 2 was big for Joe Smith to start with. I know it's not the toughest of opposition yet. Wales are in a rebuilding zone. They're having to test a few things, blood a lot of players, not a lot of veterans in that team. And Australia, to their credit, won on effort again, I think, following up from their first game, the Filippo Dalgunu try off the clearance kick, the penalty that Liam Williams kept in was just fantastic if you haven't seen it. And again, it's a credit to, I don't know, if Dalgunu does that naturally or that's a Joe Smith thing coming in of just complete and utter effort on every single play, because that was insane. Obviously saw his opportunity and took it, and then we had the try, his first try as well, which, started in their own 5-metre line, and I'm just starting to think you can start to see this Wallabies team is doing a lot of the right things via the Wallabies way, where, they're not afraid to throw the ball around, they're not afraid to risk it, and as we saw that from Tom Wright in his own end to Callaway breaking out, then a little chip kick, Fraser McWright being in the right position, and then Dalgunu finishing off and being an elite finisher now. The Wallabies, I know that it's probably a bit early to say they're back, but they're making all the right steps heading into a decisive rugby championship for them. For the Welsh, again, another good effort, stuck in the fight, have looked better every game they've played, so that obviously that Springbok test first, followed up by the first Aussie test and now the second Aussie test. They've looked better every game they play, but they need to crack a win at some point to kind of get moving back in the right direction. Moving on to the New Zealand versus England game. The All Blacks against the English, 24-17 at the Garden of Eden. As I've said, I think this English team are growing and doing a lot of things right and are up there as top 5 teams in the world, I think. It's impossibly hard, as many teams have tried and failed. 48 games, I believe it was, or 49 now, 30 years since we have lost at Eden Park. So it's not an easy task for anyone to do, let alone the English who, are getting, I think, going from strength to strength is kind of what I'm trying to say. I think in just about any game, I think I would have taken them over Aussie, I would have taken them over Argentina, other than probably touring South Africa and New Zealand. England could go anywhere and I think would put up a fight and go in as those series as favourites. That's where I see England. I see them battling with the French as that outer 4th team. I think you've got the top 3 teams in the world, which to me are New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland. And then you've got those teams trying to enter it, which are France and England. And I think France and England are those 2 teams where you can tell if they're hosting, it's a different ball game. And both those teams, conclusion is that if they host, I think they're the better team, or they'll go in as favourites even against those top three teams. So, yeah, England doing all the things right. The only criticism I have of England, I don't think they use the bench well, and that's maybe harsh because of how well New Zealand's bench performed, but I don't think the bench was well used. I also think they went away from a tactic that scored them 2 tries. If I was England, I would have sat there all day and gone, Tommy Freeman's 6'3", 6'4", Freddie Stewart's 6'4", 6'5". I'm kicking the ball to them. I'm saying we've obviously practiced this as Tommy Freeman's try was fantastic. Let's just go back to it, and let's just, every time we get an opportunity in their 22, go to the crossfield kick. We can out-jump them, we can out-compete them. The New Zealanders aren't prepared for the crossfield kick. I probably would have done that. I think they had enough opportunities in that second half to do it and didn't take it. So I think England will be ruining a real big missed opportunity here against the All Blacks, because not often do you even get the opportunity at Eden Park. And I thought at halftime, I said, I think we're going to run away with this. We didn't run away with it, but I think England will look back on that and go, that was there for the taking, and we let it slip. To the All Blacks, look, again, it's one of those ones I don't know what to make of it. You've got to win these games, and Razor has, and it's still not quite clicking. Scrum is looking delicious, which is awesome. Lineouts is looking miserable, which is not so awesome. But I believe Razor and this coaching staff will get that fixed. It's not like we don't have the lineout options. You know, Barrett, Tuipulotu's a big man. England were fantastic at the defence, so don't discredit that England were really good at defending the lineouts or competing against the lineouts. But New Zealand weren't good at winning their own ball. And it was the little things as well when we did win a lineout and we'd come down and then drop the ball. Like, we just gave England too many opportunities to cause havoc at that area, and cause havoc they did. So that was there. I go again, as great as Stephen Perifetta has been this series, and he's been very good, Beauden Barrett is Beauden Barrett. And he showed what he's got when he comes on. To me, it is a little bit of that question, and I wonder if Razor's already doing this because he's predicting Will Jordan to be the future fullback and is going to use Barrett as that elite finisher, that closer, game winner in this situation, and as he did. So it'll be interesting going into the Rugby Championship what we see the team look like. I imagine in Fiji, or playing Fiji this next week, it'll be a lot of blooding of younger players, but of some new talent. But yeah, Beauden Barrett, you can't deny how big of a performance he had on that game and his impact. I also think the same for who he's overshining a little bit, but isn't getting his hand raised enough, was Cortez Ratama, or Kos Ratama. I think since when he came on for Finlay Christie, he made a difference, and it's tough again. I'm as I've said many times, I'm not a big Finlay Christie fan, and it's one of those situations. He played very, very well for the Blues in that final, but now we sit here and I go, to me, it goes TJ, Ratama, Christie in the pecking order. And then if we're going to chuck Cam Roigard right at the top there, Finlay Christie looking on the outside, looking in to me. And I even go, Folau Fakatava, could he offer more in an All Black jersey? I don't know why it isn't clicking for Christie when he's in an All Black jersey, but it just isn't. So tough one there to kind of decipher and see how we go forward from that. But yeah, I think the team is built pretty well. That's a pretty good foundation we got as we head into the Rugby Championship. South Africa versus Ireland, and I must say I'm fortunate that I didn't watch this game live. I've watched the highlights of it. It's funny when you check the score updates and you see 8 penalties from South Africa, you go, what the hell's going on? Can they not score a try? But from the sounds of it, it was actually a pretty good game, even though that doesn't look like it on paper with just one try and all these drop goals and penalties. But I'm going to assume, through just watching the highlights and just reading articles on it, that the defences were quite formidable, and that's why it was hard to break down and taking the penalties. And again, Hondro Pollard can kick a bloody ball, can't he? So I go, look, to take this game, it's really interesting now. We've got to look at it all, because the last minute drop goal, let's start with that. A fantastic drop goal, fantastic two drop goals from Sian Frawley. And that gave Ireland the win, and that's exactly what they needed to do, is to win in South Africa, prove to everyone that they are one of the top 2 teams in the world. For South Africa, probably should have closed this line out in the 78th minute. Didn't close it out. I think they'll be disappointed with that. But again, I go, it's a 1-point margin. Ireland didn't look as good as they have previously, and I know they're facing a lot of injuries as well, but, with that, you've got to show your depth. If the drop guy had missed, we'd probably be having a lot of different discussions about a 2-0 victory for South Africa, best team in the world, quite clearly, but it didn't. And South Africa are yet, I truly believe, and I don't know, I think they've got more to give South Africa. I truly believe that. These 3 games I've watched, the Welsh game, watched the game last week, and even just seeing and hearing and looking at the result of this one, I'm interested to see if Razzie's saving something for these All Blacks tests, and that's, or the Rugby Championship, should I say, or he's still building what he sees as the perfect game plan and South African playing style. Because, it is interesting. I don't think they've fired a true shot. Like, I think last game and even this game, they could have done more. Saying that, I'm pretty happy New Zealand that this game's come out as 1-1, and I'm going to talk about why I think there should be 3-game series still. But 1-1, I think both teams evenly matched. No team has shown a clear advantage, and that's why they're number 1 and 2 teams in the world. But it will be interesting. Now, let's just talk quickly about that Ches and Kobe 4-lane incidents obstruction. Look, in the heat of the game, you do anything you can to try and get a win. And Kobe was nudged, without contact, was also slipping, was going to the ground, played on it a bit. In the heat of the moment, if you see it from a mile away, Peter Steph, Damien Delande, you probably think he has been taken out from a mile away. Look, it's not within the rugby spirit to do it. No, it isn't, from Chisholm. But these are elite professional athletes we're talking about that are trying to win a game, trying to do anything to win a game. I think it'll be a little bit of embarrassing. Yeah, that happened. It's, it's not football. But his argument is, I was doing everything in my power to try and win a game. If I felt some bit of contact and I was slipping, I went down, maybe sold it a little bit too much. Again, I don't think there's many players in the world who wouldn't be trying to do all they can in the game, and if they feel a little bit, go down and try and win the game. So, look, I don't hold any grudges. I know there's a lot of people going out saying, you shouldn't be able to do that. Oh, shut up. Like, okay, these guys, they're all trying to win this game. It's one of the most important games. There's the passion, there's the belief out there. So I'm not too bothered about the ending there with the South Africans and the Irish there. But yeah, great for Ireland to get the result, to prove to everyone they are able and capable to go down to South Africa. And I think now, since 2016, they're at like 75% win rate against South Africa. So this is, again, as we talked about this rivalry, I think it'll continue to grow from a 1-1 draw, because neither team took advantage of this. Neither team has, I guess, bragging rights. So this will continue on until they play each other again, which I assume will happen. No, actually, I don't think they've seen each other in the Northern Tour, so we may 1 or 2 years away. Last major game was Argentina versus France. Argentina got a win this time around, 33-25. To kind of heap a bit of misery on the French. We've had as much as they've had come away with 2 wins, 1 loss, they beat Uruguay in midweek fixture. Not as convincing as they probably would have wanted. I think it was about 46-24, 28, something like that. A lot of off-the-field incidents that haven't gone down well. So France probably pretty happy to get home and put the tour behind them. For Argentina, building nicely again into a Rugby Championship. As long as they can keep building, again, they're a new coach, new systems. That's all four of the Rugby Championship teams. You have to take this into consideration, have new coaches. I know Razzie has coached in South Africa before, but he's a new coach coming into a newish team. So, looking at that, looking at Argentina coming into a new coach after Cheika, Joe Smith trying to rebuild the Aussies, and obviously Razor taking on the New Zealand job. It's opened up with, I think, some really good performances from the Southern Hemisphere teams. Saying all of this year we have 2-game series because of the World Cup last year and a lot going on. Now, I get the 2-game series, and I get that they've put these other games in there. So New Zealand is facing Fiji in San Diego, Australia is facing Georgia in Australia, and South Africa is hosting Portugal, which is awesome for rugby. These smaller teams getting to play these big nations is what we keep talking about should be happening, which I love. But I also sit there and I go, man, I would have loved another game against the English. I'm sure the Welsh would have loved one more game to try and get a win over the Wallabies. South Africa versus Ireland, do we want a decider? Hell yeah. France versus Argentina, do we want a decider? Probably. So I said, okay, could this have been done slightly different? Could this have been changed up a little? And we had some free match test series. I think so. I would have preferred that, I think. And then a minnow game after. I don't know what because we're only 25 days away from the Rugby Championship. So, kicking off. So we're not far away, and try and fit it all in. Look, I don't mind it. It just hurts that we're not getting a decider, especially in this Ireland-South Africa series. But thoughts on that? I would imagine most people were probably sitting there hoping that. But I do love the fact that we are getting some minnow games, or some of the lesser teams getting opportunities to go to these bigger nations. It gives the opportunity for these bigger nations to blood some players who haven't had as much game time. I'm really interested to see what the South African team won. Joe Smith with the Wallabies has already talked about probably some decent changes with players coming in. I imagine it'll be the same with New Zealand. We might see Wallace Atiti coming in for his first game in an All Black jersey. So lots happening there, but it does leave a little sour taste in your mouth not having a third match in these series. But thoughts on that? Let me know. Let's touch base on our best friend Eddie Jones. 3 wins out of his last 15 matches now after Japan lost to Georgia at home. Well beaten by England after he said, oh yeah, we're going to fight them right to the death. All of what happened in the miserable Wallabies World Cup run. Is his mouth getting too big for his actual ability? Eddie Jones is showing, and I've said this a lot with Hughesy, and I'm really interested. I know Hughesy's a big believer that the Wallabies hopped off that circus at the right time. And you look back in the whole spectrum of things, and you look back at the timelines, and England were judged so harshly for letting go of Eddie Jones. By many, because he had the best win rate of any English coach. But now we look at it and we go, well, he came in, won, I think it was 2 of 9 games with Aussie. He's now taken over Japan, lost to England 57-10. Now lost to Georgia after hosting them. Has rugby moved past Eddie Jones? It's what I keep saying. His last, in the 3 of 15 that he's won, he hasn't beaten a Rugby Championship or Six Nation teams in those 3 games either. So in those 3 games, he hadn't beaten a Six Nations or Rugby Championship team. His last win over one of those teams was when England toured Australia in 2022. Australia in that time, Dave Rennie, again, was one of the worst performing Aussie coaches. Not all entirely his fault, but we're looking at percentages. Wasn't a good percentage of winning coaches. So I just go, since COVID, realistically, has the game passed Eddie Jones? Because whatever he's coming up with, it ain't working. It ain't working. You look at Wales beat Australia 40-6, and I know they had a few more. They had the big R's. They had Louis Rees-Summit. They had a few more pieces in their disposal in that World Cup. But now, a year later, not even a year later, Wallabies under Joe Smith have 2-0'd him and looked pretty bloody good doing it. Looked like a team trying to do it. And I go, I don't think the team has changed that much. Particularly, I think you look at the team Eddie Jones had. He had better players because he could bring in those international players overseas in. And Joe Smith hasn't done that. And Joe Smith has delivered results. And I just go, is it time to call it quits, Eddie? I just sit there and I go, his legacy is getting run for a muck. It doesn't look good. As Japan rugby, I can't see standing for too long of poor results. So is it time to hang up the boots, Eddie Jones? Hang up the coaching cap? I honestly think it's getting to that point where it has to be discussed. It has to be, Eddie needs to realise either this game's passing him by and he can't deliver, or his legacy will go down the drain. Let's lead on, though, to the Rugby Championship. 25 days, as I mentioned before. Who goes in as favourites now? We've seen South Africa 1-1. with Ireland. We've seen New Zealand an unconvincing 2-0, but still 2-0. We've seen the Wallabies an unconvincing 2-0, but still 2-0. Argentina 1-1 against France, All in all, I think every team has put their foot forward to say, look, we're not going to be easy beats in this Rugby Championship and we could compete here. So I kind of go, look, New Zealand host Pumas to start it off, which is going to be hard for Los Pumas, but they've done it before. Famous win in Christchurch. Australia hosts South Africa, and that's going to be the most fascinating one. Like, everyone's going to be talking about South Africa hosting New Zealand, but South Africa have a job to do in Australia against a new Australian team. This isn't the same Australian team that we've always seen. They love to tackle. They love to tackle hard. They love to play with an open spirit. It's the best Aussie team we've seen in a very long time. And as Australians are saying, the Wallabies are back. I wouldn't go that far, but if Aussie pick up one of those games, it takes the shine a little bit off that South Africa-New Zealand tour. Same with if Argentina does it to New Zealand. Let's not forget that Argentina have done that. So if, and it's a big if at the moment, New Zealand and South Africa go through undefeated in those games, South Africa then hosts New Zealand in 2 games. So it's the old 2 games in one location. So when I say New Zealand host Pumas, Argentina travel, play 2 games in back-to-back weeks. They then, I believe, get a week off. New Zealand then get a week off as well. Head to South Africa, and then the last games are split. So Australia and New Zealand have a game each. Obviously, the Bledisloe in South Africa, and Argentina host a game each. So I go, look, we'll probably do full breakdown of predictions when Hughesy's back and we're a bit closer. But I think South Africa go in as favourites, and I say that because they're hosting New Zealand. I actually think there's a good chance Australia take one from South Africa. They seem to always love hosting South Africa. Obviously, the last time they did it, they didn't take one, but again, they were fascinating games. But then the fact that South Africa are hosting New Zealand gives me the belief that this could be a tough old tour, tough old tournament for Razor and his All Blacks. But saying that, South Africa are always been below par when it comes to the Rugby Championship. I believe it's 4 wins in 27 years off the top of my head. And again, don't quote me on that, but only 4 Rugby Championship wins in 27 years. They have had the most wooden spoons. Obviously, Argentina not fully been part of the competition for as long and are closing on them. But they have a history of not being able to deliver in this tournament. Obviously, we won't talk about their World Cup exploits, but in this tournament, they have had a history of not being able to deliver. And it same went when, Ian Foster's job was on the line and he had to go to South Africa and delivered a win and got there and led to the All Blacks winning the Rugby Championship. So I kind of go there in the favourites. For the wooden spoon prediction, I'm going to go with Argentina. I think purely because I think, I say that they have to travel to New Zealand, Argentina, and I think Australia, it's just the way I've seen Australia, they've looked better for the favourites of wooden spoon, but it may change. This may change before I make my formal predictions with Hughesy, but I look at it at the moment and I go, look, where we're standing after these games, I think the favourites to host the Rugby Championship go in as South Africa, although poor history. I think the favoured for the spoon go in as Argentina, probably with history as well. But it is so up in the air this time, coming off the back of these mid-year tests. I think all 4 teams have a right to go in confident that they could beat anyone on their day. Like I look at the way New Zealand just played England and I go, if I was Argentina, I'd be licking my lips going, there's a chance we can go down there and get a win. If I was Australian and I looked the way South Africa play, I would be licking my lips too. And I'm sure it'd be vice versa. That's what I'm kind of getting at. Like, I think every team on their day could beat each of these teams. So saying all of that, it's going to be one hell of a Rugby Championship, and we're not too far away, under a month away now of it. They've all got to get through their tests coming up next week against smaller teams. New Zealand, as I said, against Fiji, Australia versus Georgia, South Africa versus Portugal, Argentina, I want to say, against Uruguay, but don't quote me on that. And then, we'll see from there how the Rugby Championship starts to pan out. For now, though, I have been Luke from the Rugby Booth, host, one part of That Rugby podcast. My co-host shall be back from next week, Hughesy, so you won't just have to listen to my voice at least, and you'll get an Australian side of things. So I'm sure he'll come back in a pretty damn good mood. He's gone on holiday, seen a bit of stuff, done a bit of stuff, comes back to a Wallabies 2-0 win. If Wallabies get up over Georgia, I'm sure he will be in a really good headspace, which is not usual for an Australian fan, you know what I'm saying? Like, normally I'm checking on, doing a couple of checkups on him just to make sure he's all right, especially after the Rugby World Cup. But for now, I've been Luke. Thank you for joining me. I will see you again, same time, same place next week. Goodbye.